Hello, Jack here. In this video we're going to be making a top-down shooter style game in which you control your character and shoot in 4 directions, throwing water balloons at different enemies. We're going to add lots of different things to this game. So we'll start off by making a player character that can move using WASD on the keyboard and is confined to the layout such that you can't go anywhere else. So we'll start off by making a sprite. We'll call it player and place it into our layout, and I'm going to be using very basic graphics in this, just simple coloured squares and shapes, so that you can then add your own versions to it later on. I don't want to get in the way of your creativity. So we'll start with a green cube. We're going to add that on here and size it up so it fits nicely into the layout when we're running the game. That's probably a little bit too big. I want to see a bit more of the screen around my character, so I'm going to make him a little bit smaller. There we go. Now we're going to use the 8 direction movement behavior for this, and we're going to set it to just 4 directions. So we'll add a new behavior to our player sprite, select 8 direction, and we'll adjust the settings over here to make it just 4 directions, which means you can't move in diagonals. We don't want to set the angle when we move, and we don't want to use default controls. Constructor will default to using the arrow keys. We want to set it to be WASD because we're going to be using our arrow keys to throw our water balloons later. So we'll add the keyboard object to our layout, and on the event sheet we're going to set up the WASD movement by simulating 8 direction control. So if the key is down, and select the key you want to start with, we're going to start with W for up. Then we'll add the action on the player to simulate control, and we're going to simulate up. Test it out. And we're going to do the same thing for down, left and right. So that's using S, A and D as well. So S is down, and we can copy and paste this and just replace the objects. A is left, and D is going to be right. Just double clicking on an action or an event in our event sheet will let us adjust the parameters that we've already selected. You can also get to this by right clicking and select replace object or replace action. Let's give it a test. So now we can move in the 4 directions using WASD. But it's kind of hard to tell how far we're moving or if we're moving at all around the screen. So we're going to add a tiled background, which will give us some context for where our character is on the level. So we'll add another layer at the bottom, call it background, and to the background layer we're going to add a new object called tiled background. Pick a nice design with some shapes on it so you have some context for where you're moving. If it's just a flat colour and there's nothing else on screen, it's going to be difficult to tell if you're moving at all. With a couple of dots we can tell that we're moving just fine. Obviously if you're going to make this into a nice big and complicated game, you might want to come up with a nicer design than just some dots. This is just to demonstrate how we're going to work. Now we can't see our background because our game layer is not transparent. So select the layout and in the properties bar tick the transparent box and then lock your background. We're not going to be using that background layer again. Now we can move around and we can see where we're moving, but the camera's not following our player at the moment, so if we were to move off screen we wouldn't be able to see it. So we're going to add a behavior to this, and that's going to be the scroll to behavior. This makes sure the camera stays locked to our player. So now we can move beyond where we were previously, and our character stays relatively close to the centre. But we can still move outside the layout, so that's no good. We're going to add the bound to layout behavior, and make sure it's set to edge, which means no part of our character can leave the layout. Great, we've got a character that moves. In the next part we're going to look at adding enemies, shooting, bosses, levels and more. Test it out, make sure you're happy with the way it moves. You can change the parameters and we'll move on to the next section.